Have you ever heard of a hero named Henry Johnson? His story is a powerful one, and it begins a long time ago. Henry was born in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, around the year 1892. When he was a teenager, his family moved north to Albany, New York. Life was not always easy, but Henry was a hard worker. He worked many different jobs to help his family. He was a chauffeur, a soda mixer, and even a red-cap porter at the Albany train station. He was known for being a strong and dependable young man. He had a big heart and a quiet strength that people noticed. This quiet strength would soon be tested in ways he could never have imagined. When the United States entered World War I in 1917, a wave of patriotism swept the nation. Henry Johnson felt this call to serve his country. He wanted to do his part and stand up for the ideals of freedom and democracy. So, he decided to enlist in the United States Army. At that time, however, the military was segregated. This meant that African American soldiers were not allowed to serve alongside white soldiers. Because of these rules, Henry was assigned to an all-black unit. This unit would become one of the most famous of the entire war. It was the 369th Infantry Regiment based in Harlem, New York. The men of the 369th were filled with pride and a desire to prove their worth. They were eager to fight for their country, a country that did not always treat them with the respect they deserved. They trained hard, preparing for the challenges that lay ahead on the battlefields of Europe. Henry Johnson, with his determined spirit, fit right in with these brave soldiers. He learned to be a rifleman, to follow orders, and to work as part of a team. He did not know it then, but he was preparing for a moment that would define his life and inspire generations of people who came after him. The soldiers of the 369th Infantry Regiment were ready for anything. They carried with them the hopes of their families and their communities. They were determined to show the world their courage and their loyalty to the United States. Henry Johnson stood proudly among them, a young man from Albany who was about to step onto the world stage. He was just one of many, but his personal story of bravery would soon shine brightly. His journey was just beginning, and it would take him across an ocean to the front lines of a great and terrible war, where his true character would be revealed. When the 369th Infantry Regiment finally arrived in France, they faced a surprising situation. Some American commanders did not want to lead African American troops in combat. Instead of being sent to fight under the American flag, the entire regiment was assigned to the French army. This was an unusual step, but for the men of the 369th, it was a turning point. The French military treated them with a level of respect and equality they had not experienced back home. They were given French weapons, French helmets, and were integrated into the French command structure. For the first time, they were seen simply as soldiers, not as black soldiers. Under French leadership, the 369th was sent to the front lines. They were given the name Hellfighters by their German enemies because of how fiercely they fought. The name was a badge of honor, and they wore it with immense pride. The Harlem Hellfighters spent more time in continuous combat than any other American unit in the war. They served for 191 days in the trenches, never losing a foot of ground or having a single soldier captured by the enemy. They proved their bravery and skill time and time again, earning the respect of their French allies and the fear of their opponents. Henry Johnson and his fellow soldiers faced the daily dangers of trench warfare. They lived in mud and cold, with the constant threat of enemy shelling and gas attacks. Life on the front was difficult and exhausting, but their spirits remained high. They supported one another, forming a strong bond of brotherhood forged in the crucible of war. Henry performed his duties with diligence, standing guard, patrolling the dangerous no-man's land between the trenches, and always being ready for a fight. He was a reliable and courageous soldier, trusted by his comrades and his French officers to hold the line no matter what. This experience with the French army was important. It showed the Harlem Hellfighters what was possible. It gave them a taste of a world where the color of their skin did not limit their opportunities or the respect they received. They were not just fighting a war against Germany, they were also fighting a battle for their own dignity. Their incredible record in combat was a powerful statement. It demonstrated that courage, skill, and patriotism were not defined by race. The Hellfighters, with Henry Johnson among them, were rewriting the narrative of what an American soldier could be. The night that would make Henry Johnson a legend was May 15, 1918. He and a fellow soldier, Needham Roberts, were standing guard at a remote outpost in the Argonne Forest. It was just after midnight, dark and quiet. Suddenly they heard a strange snipping sound coming from the nearby barbed wire fence. They knew it was a German raiding party. A large group of at least a dozen German soldiers was stealthily approaching their position, intending to capture them. Henry and Needham were outnumbered, but they were not going to give up without a fight. They prepared themselves for the attack that was about to come. As the German soldiers swarmed their post, the battle began. Henry threw a grenade, and then he and Needham started firing their rifles into the darkness. But soon, their weapons jammed. Needham Roberts was badly wounded and could no longer fight. The German soldiers grabbed him and started to drag him away as a prisoner. Henry Johnson refused to let his friend be taken. Even though he had been shot and wounded himself, he knew he had to do something. With no working rifle, he grabbed the only weapon he had left, a heavy bolo knife. He charged into the group of enemy soldiers with a powerful roar. What happened next was an act of incredible bravery. Johnson fought like a lion, using his knife and the butt of his rifle as a club. He was a one-man army, fighting with pure determination to save his comrade. He fought off the entire German squad, forcing them to retreat back into the night. In the chaos of the fight, he was wounded 21 times by bullets and bayonets, but he never stopped. He saved Needham Roberts and held the outpost until reinforcements arrived. When it was all over, the area was littered with enemy weapons and evidence of the fierce struggle that had taken place. Because of his ferocity and courage that night, the Germans gave him a nickname, Black Death. The story of his actions spread quickly throughout the Allied forces. He became an instant hero. The French were so impressed by his bravery that they awarded him their highest military honor, the Croix de Guerre avec Palme. He was one of the very first Americans to receive this prestigious award. Henry Johnson had shown the world what one person could do when filled with courage and loyalty. He had faced impossible odds and had won, protecting his friend and his post against an overwhelming force. When Henry Johnson returned to the United States after the war, he was celebrated as a hero. His regiment, the Harlem Hellfighters, was honored with a massive parade in New York City. Thousands of people lined the streets to cheer for the brave soldiers. Former President Theodore Roosevelt even called Henry one of the 5 bravest Americans of the war. For a brief moment it seemed as though his country was finally giving him the recognition he had earned. His face was used on Army recruitment posters and stamps. He was a symbol of American courage, a testament to the valor of the African-American soldier. However, this fame did not last. While France had honored him with its highest medal, the United States government did not. He was not awarded the Medal of Honor or the Purple Heart, despite his 21 wounds. His injuries were so severe that he could not return to his old job as a porter. The military paperwork did not even mention his combat wounds, which meant he could not get disability pay. The man who was once called a hero found himself struggling to make a living. He traveled the country speaking about his experiences, but the promises of a better life for African-American veterans were not kept. The final years of Henry Johnson's life were very difficult. The man who had fought so bravely for his country was left with nothing. His severe injuries caused him constant pain, and his inability to work left him in poverty. He died in 1929, at the young age of 32, and was buried in Arlington National Cemetery. For many decades, his incredible story was largely forgotten by the public. It was a sad ending for a man who had given so much. A great American hero had been overlooked by the very nation he had defended with such incredible bravery. But a hero's story can never truly be lost. Many years later, people began to rediscover the tale of Henry Johnson. His family, historians, and dedicated politicians worked to right the wrongs of the past. They fought to get him the recognition he deserved. Finally, in 2015, nearly a century after his heroic act, President Barack Obama posthumously awarded Henry Johnson the Medal of Honor, America's highest military decoration. His story is a reminder that heroes come in all forms and from all backgrounds. It teaches us about courage and justice, and the importance of remembering every person who has fought for our nation's ideals. His legacy inspires us to ensure that all heroes are honored, no matter how long it takes.